What if the deadliest weapons in modern war are not tanks or missiles, but the absence of light and heat? Imagine waking up in your own bed, reaching for the lamp, and finding that the switch does nothing. There is no hum from the refrigerator, no warmth from the radiator, no signal from your phone. Your entire city is paralyzed, not by the rumble of invading columns, but by a silent, targeted blackout. This is not a scene from a dystopian novel. It is the new front line of conflict, and today, Ukraine stands at its epicenter. This silent battlefield is not defined by trenches, but by the wires and pipelines that snake beneath our feet. In a single night, entire cities can be plunged into darkness. Missiles and drones, guided with chilling precision, no longer focus solely on barracks or tanks. Instead, they seek out substations, transformers, and the arteries of daily life: electricity, heating, water. Just a handful of well-placed strikes can freeze millions in their homes, shattering routines and reducing families to huddling in the cold, powerless and afraid. Consider the winter of 2023, when Kyiv, a city of over 3 million, lost power during a record-breaking cold snap. Hospitals switched to generators, surgeons performed emergency operations by flashlight, and teachers struggled to keep children warm in unheated classrooms. Food spoiled in fridges, traffic lights failed, and the simple act of boiling water for tea became a challenge for thousands. This is not a theoretical threat. It is the lived reality for millions of Ukrainians. But the crisis extends far beyond Ukraine's borders. As the war drags on, Ukraine's lifeline to the West grows increasingly fragile. Governments in Europe and North America, once quick to send aid, now face mounting domestic pressures. Budgets are stretched thin by inflation and political wrangling. Aid packages that once sailed through parliaments now stall, and support is increasingly conditional. Every delay slows Ukraine's recovery and leaves its citizens more vulnerable, more exposed to the cold, the dark, and the uncertainty that winter brings. The consequences of this new kind of war ripple outward. Most people view war as something distant, confined to maps and news reports. But when energy bills rise, new taxes are levied, or rolling blackouts strike at home, as happened in Moldova in the winter of 2022, suddenly the front lines feel much closer. In a world now woven together by energy grids and economic ties, no one is untouched. Ignoring this seismic shift could leave anyone, financially, physically, or emotionally, exposed to the shocks of 21st century conflict. How did war migrate from muddy trenches to the pulsing veins of our infrastructure? To understand this transformation is to grasp the new rules of conflict, and why the outcome may affect us all, no matter where we live. Let's trace how this invisible war is fought, and why its battles could shape our lives far beyond Ukraine's borders. Forget the old images of flags waving and tanks rumbling across open fields. The modern front line is quieter, closer, woven into the circuits and cables of your city's electric grid. In the past, a city under siege might have braced for artillery barrages and infantry assaults. Today, the enemy is just as likely to attack from thousands of kilometers away, using software code or drones guided by satellite. In recent nights across Ukraine, war crept in not with marching boots, but with an eerie hush before the sirens. Then came the barrage, the sky alive with waves of drones and missiles, each one hunting the arteries of the nation's energy. This was not random violence. It was methodical, unblinking, and relentless. Take, for instance, the fate of Kyiv's TETS 5 and TETS 6, the twin thermal power plants that had kept the city's lights on for decades. In a single, coordinated attack, both were gutted, reduced to smoldering wrecks. Their destruction was not just symbolic. It meant rolling blackouts, frozen apartments, and silent assembly lines. Factories that once produced vital supplies for the war effort ground to a halt, and workers found themselves shivering in the dark, unsure if their next paycheck would come. The assault did not end there. Hydroelectric dams, oil depots, gas facilities, and key substations, each has become a bullseye. The Kremenchuk, Kanev, and Srednedneprovsk hydroelectric stations, once sources of clean energy for millions, were hit in rapid succession. In Poltava, oil and gas companies saw their infrastructure set ablaze, choking off fuel supplies needed for emergency generators and ambulances. Each strike erodes the very foundations of normal life. The aim is unmistakable, not only to cripple machines, but to fracture the routines, hopes, and resolve of a nation. Even Ukraine's most hopeful voices now reluctantly use a word they once avoided: catastrophe. This is what modern war looks like. When the power fails, classrooms empty, hospital machines flicker, and phones die, not by accident, but by design. Surrender is the goal, achieved not by invading armies, but by plunging millions into darkness and cold. There is a chilling truth behind it. No air defense, no matter how advanced, can stop every drone and missile when they arrive in such overwhelming waves. Consider the mathematics of defense. In one night, Kiev faced more than 20 drones in a single barrage, each one a potential disaster. Even if 90% are intercepted, 2 still get through. And as the attacks grow in number and complexity, defenses are stretched thinner. This is not just a Ukrainian problem. It is a warning for every nation that relies on sprawling, interconnected grids. Ignoring this new reality is perilous. If we cling to old visions of bullets and trenches, we miss the real scope and intent. The battleground is now power, heat, and all the invisible systems that daily life requires. The consequences reach far beyond Ukraine, affecting energy bills, taxes, and security calculations for entire continents. Look at history for a parallel. During World War II, the German Luftwaffe's blitz on London sought to break the city's spirit by destroying infrastructure. But then, cities could rebuild more easily. Today, the interconnectedness of grids means a single failure can cascade across regions. In 2021, a cyber attack on Colonial Pipeline in the United States led to fuel shortages and panic buying across the eastern seaboard, proof that no country is immune. One urgent question remains: how have these attacks grown so effective, and why can't even the world's most advanced defenses keep pace? To understand the scale of this crisis, we need to pull back and examine how Ukraine's energy grid became so vulnerable and what it means for the rest of the world. The answers reveal a sobering new playbook for 21st century warfare. What if no shield, no matter how advanced, can truly protect a nation's lifelines? This is not chaos. Each strike against Ukraine's infrastructure is chosen with chilling intent. The goal is simple and ruthless: to cripple power, heat, and communication at their source, squeezing the country's veins until daily life unravels. Ukraine's air defenses face an impossible arithmetic. Swarms of drones and volleys of missiles arrive by the dozens, sometimes by the hundreds, in coordinated waves. Even the best anti-aircraft systems are overwhelmed when so many threats descend at once. Some are intercepted, but enough break through. Critical substations ignite, while transformers that once powered whole regions are left in ruins. Yet the damage is not limited to twisted metal and shattered concrete. Every hit sends shockwaves through the web of the grid, triggering overloads and cascading failures that ripple far beyond the impact site. The lights do not just go out where bombs fall. They flicker and die across entire cities. Hospitals, homes, and businesses plunge into darkness, not only from direct attack, but because the entire system buckles under sudden, relentless stress. This is not a campaign of days or weeks. It is a war of exhaustion, measured in months and winters. When electricity fails, water pumps fall silent, factories grind to a halt, digital networks freeze. The front lines are no longer just trenches. They are every kitchen, every intensive care unit, every street corner where survival becomes a daily struggle. Ukraine's energy grid was once a symbol of resilience, admired by Western partners. Now, that symbol is fracturing. Each fresh barrage makes repair more costly. Each blackout deepens the crisis. The grid risks becoming a memory, an echo from a time when electricity could be trusted. If the enemy's true weapon is attrition by infrastructure, then every civilian becomes a target. Every home is at risk. The stakes are elemental: the ability to endure winter, to keep the sick alive, to simply flip a switch and chase away the dark. As Ukraine's nights grow longer, Western support is flickering. Allies are weighing costs, and attention is shifting. How much longer will outside help keep the power flowing, before fatigue and new crises elsewhere pull the plug? The invisible war for Ukraine's grid is exposing cracks not just in power lines, but in the alliances and promises that have sustained the country. What happens when the world's willingness to help is tested by its own limits? When compassion runs thin and budgets tighten, who will remain at your side when the world turns cold? Across Europe, the political climate is hardening. In Germany and Poland, public opinion has shifted, no longer driven by empathy, but by calculation. Now, more than 2/3 of Germans favor cutting social benefits for Ukrainians, a statistic echoed in Polish debates. Berlin and Warsaw are responding with policy, not just words. The era of open doors is ending. Governments are scaling back refugee programs, slashing allowances, and issuing a new message: find employment or face the winter on your own. Since the war's onset, over 1,200,000 Ukrainians have sought refuge in Germany alone. This unprecedented wave has strained social services to the breaking point. The initial welcome has faded, replaced by skepticism, fatigue, and growing fiscal pressure. Generosity is being replaced by spreadsheets and budget lines. The United States is following suit. Ukrainian refugees must now pay mandatory fees simply to extend their legal stay, a stark signal that support is no longer unconditional. Aid has become a transaction, not a given. The age of limitless generosity has quietly closed its doors. Now, it is numbers that steer policy: the count of refugees, the size of deficits, the soaring price of energy, and the dwindling days before winter's grip tightens. Each politician faces a ruthless calculation: compassion weighed against cost. The result, increasingly, is a tilt away from Ukraine. As the first frost settles over Eastern Europe, Ukraine confronts a new, merciless challenge. The central question is no longer about the next military push or the hope of negotiations. It is about survival versus unraveling. Can a country endure attacks on its power grid, its heating pipes, and its international lifelines once Western support begins to unravel? If solidarity in the West falters, Ukraine could be left isolated, facing both winter and war alone. The balance of power may shift in a single season. The cost will be measured not only in kilowatts and euros, but in shattered lives and fading hope. As the humanitarian safety net phrase, Ukraine's leaders must prepare for a harsher reality. The coming winter is not just a test of endurance, it is a battle for survival on every front. Victory in this war is not decided by bullets or bombs, but by the quiet flick of a switch and the cold logic of a budget line. Forget the old reels of tanks grinding across muddy borders. Today, the real battles are waged in energy ministries, city councils, and the locked offices of finance committees. Power stations, gas pumps, and transformer substations, these are the new trenches of the 21st century. Control over infrastructure is now the sharpest weapon. Cut the power, and you do not just dim the lights. You choke off resistance, freeze economies, and force entire cities into crisis mode. Every calculated blackout shifts the front from earth and steel to silent rooms where wires converge and boilers pulse in the dark. While the world waits for dramatic headlines, like rumors of secret peace talks or military breakthroughs, the crucial moves happen in silence. Political theater dazzles, but the quiet passage of emergency energy laws, the subtle tweaks to aid budgets, and the spreadsheets tallying refugee costs decide who survives and who collapses. Now, every citizen is drafted, whether they realize it or not. If you pay taxes, vote, or simply keep your home warm, you are part of this struggle. The price at the pump, the stress on hospitals, even the shifting tides of social media outrage, these subtle levers shape the war more than the loudest rallies. So do not lose yourself in the noise of troop movements or diplomatic spectacles. Watch the numbers: energy shipments rerouted, billions redirected in relief, the public's mood shifting day by day. These are the silent metrics that decide whether a nation flickers on or fades to black. The danger is obvious. If we ignore these hidden fronts, we blind ourselves to the forces reshaping our future, our security, and the very stories we will tell. The fate of this war, and those that follow, will be written not in gunfire, but in outages and spreadsheets. The next battle is not just on distant soil, but in the wires overhead and the policies debated at home. To understand what comes next, follow the current, both the electric and the political. The next chapter of this war will not be written in headlines, but in megawatts and spreadsheets. Images of burning power plants and silent, powerless cities reveal a truth the news rarely captures. Real power in modern conflict is not the roar of explosions, but the quiet flick of a switch that casts millions into darkness. Today's wars are shaped less by tanks and flags, and more by control over the grid, the gas line, and the fragile backbone of daily life. While politicians debate sanctions and peace deals, the true battle rages beneath our feet and behind locked doors. Calculated blackouts and targeted strikes on infrastructure are pushing entire nations to the brink, not through a single decisive blow, but by a slow, relentless grind that erodes both resolve and resources. Let's look at a concrete scenario. In December of 2022, Odessa, a vital port city, lost power after a drone strike on a transformer substation. Not only did residents lose heat and light, but ships could not dock safely, and cranes stood idle. The local economy lost millions in a single day. Small businesses, already battered by war, faced ruin. These effects were not isolated. They radiated outward, disrupting trade across the Black Sea and raising the price of imported goods as far away as Italy and Turkey. Western support for Ukraine is beginning to fracture. Now, the balance of power shifts not on battlefields, but in boardrooms and budget meetings across Europe and America. Economic fatigue, rising costs, and political gamesmanship are quietly rewriting the rules of engagement. The war's center of gravity moves from guns and armies to generators and spreadsheets packed with repair bills and shrinking reserves. This is not just about distant countries or abstract strategies. These invisible battlefields ripple outward, shaping global security, nudging up your energy bills, and quietly redrawing the boundaries of history. Staying alert to these silent shifts is no longer optional. Miss the signals, and you risk being left powerless, both literally and politically. So what can be done? History offers some lessons and practical steps. During the London Blitz, communities survived by creating local shelters, sharing resources, and maintaining morale through nightly radio broadcasts. In modern Ukraine, citizens have begun to organize community heating centers, stockpile batteries and fuel, and develop neighborhood watch groups to report drone activity. Governments can invest in microgrids, localized energy systems that can operate independently if the main grid fails. Businesses can diversify supply chains and update emergency plans. On an individual level, keeping emergency kits, learning basic first aid, and staying informed through trusted sources can make all the difference. Internationally, alliances must adapt. Aid should not only be about sending weapons, but about repairing infrastructure, training cyber defense teams, and sharing technology for resilient grids. Policymakers need to recognize that supporting Ukraine, however costly, means preventing even greater shocks to global energy markets and security. The alternative is clear. Let the lights go out in Kiev today, and tomorrow's blackout could be in Berlin, Paris, or even New York. As the world's attention drifts elsewhere, ask yourself, when the headlines fade, who truly wins the war for the future? The ones holding territory, or the ones holding the power switch? The answer will not be found in the next dramatic news alert, but in the quiet resilience of communities, the foresight of policymakers, and the shared recognition that in the 21st century, security is measured not just in soldiers, but in light, warmth, and the power to shape our own destinies.